Prime Minister Imran Khan says Ravi Riverfront Urban Development Project will create job opportunities and accelerate economic activities besides catering to the needs of Lahore. U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump test positive for coronavirus. The president says they begin quarantine and recovery process immediately. Prime Minister Imran Khan wishes President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump speedy recovery from COVID-19. Foreign Office refutes as speculative a media report claiming Pakistani army fighting alongside Azerbaijani forces against Armenia over the Nagorno-Karabakh says Pakistan is deeply concerned over deteriorating security situation in region. Minister for National Food Security Fakhar Imam says new attack of locust averted. Government adopted effective strategy to eliminate swarms. European Union threatens to impose sanctions on Turkey over what it termed provocations and pressures in row with Greece in Eastern Mediterranean. But that's all for the moment. For more details and live streaming, log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can find us on Facebook page with the name of PTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldPTV. Thanks a lot for watching, and it's goodbye for now.
The Ubia National Park is located in the lush hills of the Galiat forests that stretch from near Islamabad to Abbottabad and through to Azad Kashmir. It is a sanctuary traditionally known for its spectacular scenery and its unspoiled, peaceful surroundings. But in the last few decades, that has changed. Every year, more than 120,000 tourists visit the park in the summer season. The area has become increasingly popular and is now bustling with traffic and large-scale development. Where there were trees and streams, there are now hotels and shops. The fumes emitted from vehicles affects not only trees and plant life, but also the wild animals that live in the forest. The large number of hotels, summer houses and restaurants brings its own set of problems. The careless disposal of waste by these hotels and restaurants threatens the fragile ecosystem of the park. Garbage and contaminated streams are to be found all along the once pristine trekking routes. This solid waste and contaminated water has become a serious threat to the environment. Much of it is non-biodegradable, and the rest decomposes at a particularly slow rate due to the cold climate. The garbage can harm the animals of the forest too, as they forage for food. Where there were once streams of crystal clear water, there are now rivers of garbage. The polluted water affects communities downstream who have to go further from home every day to find clean water. Waterborne diseases force the local people to spend money on medical care, which they can hardly afford. All this pollution contributes daily to the degradation of the forest, and the eubia is under threat. Both visitors and local communities need to be aware of the harm the waste and pollution is causing. The lack of proper waste management makes the problems worse. All this waste pollutes the forest and harms animals and humans alike. If we don't change the way we treat the forest, there will soon be no sanctuary left. Nothing for the visitors to enjoy, nor for the mountain communities that have made Ayubia their home for generations.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister's interview when he spoke in detail about the role of the opposition, the target of the opposition. He talked about the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and how his agenda was to help, was to put the army against the country as far as India is concerned. We'll be talking about his role there. We'll be talking more about a lot that he spoke about, particularly about the anti-Pakistan forces, anti-nationalistic forces as far as the opposition is concerned. Also more about the role of his own party, his own politics in bringing about the change, accountability narrative again, and how accountability was actually the reason behind all the hue and cry as far as the opposition is concerned. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Amir Hussain, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Safiullah Gauri, who's a legal expert. Thank you for joining us. We'll also be joined by Meher Tarar, who is a senior analyst and journalist, and Rafiq Rajwana Sahab, who is the former governor and leader PMLN. Thank you so much for joining us today. Amir Sahab, like I said, you know, the Prime Minister said that he at this time has categorically the best relationship with the military possible. He talked at length about the PMLN and about the leadership of the PMLN and the former Prime Minister, and how his relationship with the army has traditionally been fraught with a lot of issues, and not only as far as this military leadership and the narrative that is coming particularly from the PMLN at this time. also, anti-nationalistic forces, and also that India helping the former Prime Minister to weaken a state institution like the Army of Pakistan. A lot of things were said about the army, about the judiciary, about what's your take overall about what the Prime Minister said today?
Thank you, Mahrukh. I think let's talk about the difference between a statesman and a politician. I think sometimes the leaders, in particular the ruling party, has to demonstrate being a statesman, trying to build the cohesive forces of the state, bringing together different opinions and trying to create a narrative which will help actually the larger interest of the nation. So Prime Minister has spoken a number of things, like he was in a disarray, sort of trying to put together a lot of things which are not proportionate in response, because you have to have a proportionate response, not out of the proportion, because accusing a political leader to be anti-Pakistan has to be a lot of substance has to go into that. So the first thing is that.
But he did say, I mean, there has been a lot said about against the army by the PMLN and the leadership of the PMLN, and now it is being said openly all over. So don't you think that warranted a response from the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think, but there has to be very calculated response, in particular when the country is in very deep crisis right now, because there is kind of trust deficit between political parties, and there is kind of a widening gap between opposition and the ruling party, and that gap is something that needs to be bridged through negotiation, through perpetual engagement. Well, there are cases, of course, accountability.
Do you think that there can be a perpetual engagement at this time? I'm going to go to Rafiq Rajwana Sahab also, but particularly with the way things are at this time, openly and antagonistic, openly confrontational as far as the PMLN is concerned, taking on the establishments, as it were, taking on the army, as it were, naming them. Do you think that it's possible to have that kind of conciliatory politics?
Antagonism is at its height right now, and we understand that. But right now PML is operating like they have nothing to lose. For example, they are in the ground. They have lost number of things politically. The political mileage has gone. So in a way, the mindset is fixed that they have nothing to lose and they are coming out full. But I think that is that is also very, very inappropriate in a situation where you can also criticize state institutions, but there are ways to criticizing them on the governance issues, on the issues of political issues, on issues of democratic dispensation. So these kind of responses are important, but outrightly rejecting everything is, of course, it warrants a lot of response. But Prime Minister even could have go down a bit, trying to be a calculated respondent to these issues. For example, saying that.
I will come back to you.
Yeah, sure.
I will then go to Safiullah also, but I'm going to go to Rafiq Rajwana Sahab first and get his response. Rafiq Sahab, you're a seasoned politician. You're also a former governor. What's your take on the response of the Prime Minister in the interview today when he spoke at length? Calling the former Prime Minister, saying that he was, playing into the hands of as far as Indian agenda is concerned, against the military. How do you take that? And also saying that as far as the judiciary, the comments that he made about the judiciary, what's your take on this?
I think it was unbecoming of the Prime Minister to say like this about a person who has been elected thrice the Prime Minister of the country, and who had done atomic explosion and gave a befitting message and reply to the Indians. And it's very easy to say somebody is kafir, to say somebody is traitor, he is Indian agent, but it's not good. I think that the situation with which we are confronted, instead of extinguishing the fire, they are adding fuel to the fire. And I was
But are
listening
you,
the Prime
is it
Minister.
possible,
Yes.
as far as the PMLN is concerned, is it possible at this time? We've seen the fiery speeches of Maryam Nawaz also. We've seen how she's taken on the establishment. We've seen how she's openly, naming names, as it were. But is it possible at this time for that kind of conciliatory politics? Isn't that time long gone now for the PMLN in particular?
The conciliatory politics, that is the ruling party can take step on that. We have the reservations and we have we are in protest against the government. The common man is raising hue and cry what is happening with him and the political situation, the economy, all that. Let's not go to the detail now because we are discussing something else. So this is the duty of the government, and the opposition has to say something on the policy of the government on the issues. And whatsoever Maryam Nawaz Sharif said yesterday,
the opposition doesn't have to say that the Prime Minister has been brought by the establishment's role. All of the stuff that you've been saying, this is not really legitimate criticism of the government and its policies. Wouldn't you agree?
The Prime Minister, in one way, would have or could have criticized the speech, some part of the speech of the former Prime Minister Maryam Nawaz Sharif, our party leader. But saying this, that he was saying something on the desktop or was supporting the Indian stand, that was not called for. That was not called for. This is our internal issue. We have to resolve this internal issue without involving other forces in this. And when the Prime Minister was talking today, I just heard for just a few minutes, he was saying that if it would have happened with me, I would have dismissed this man. If it would have happened with me, I would have sacked this man. So instead of saying this, he was saying the same thing which Maryam Nawaz Sharif was saying. So then the situation is like this. Here the reaction should not be like this. The senior element, let the sanity prevail. Let the situation be taken care of. This is our own country. Everybody loves the country, including Maryam Nawaz Sharif, and we strongly protest that he is being portrayed as a traitor or he is being portrayed as friend of India. This is very bad.
I will, Rafiq Sahab, I will come back to you. Please stay with us. I'm going to go to Meher Tarid, and before that, Meher, basically, a lot that Rafiq Sahab is saying, he's talking about conciliatory politics. He's saying that the Prime Minister said that he would probably, if he was, he said that if a general or he was told that the same thing had happened to him, he talked about circumstances of events earlier on, he would have dismissed them. Is it so wrong for the Supreme Commander of, our armed forces to say that? Certainly he can dismiss whoever he chooses to. He is the commander of the armed forces. Isn't that true?
Thank you, Mahrukh. The thing is, whatever Prime Minister Imran Khan said in his interview to Nadeem Malik is what every democratic Pakistani would have wanted him to say today, yesterday, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Change the name, change the face. This is what we would expect any democratically elected Prime Minister to have said. There were 30 years of military rule in Pakistan, and it has been there is so much that shouldn't have happened the way it has happened, and the fact that most of the civilian leaders have kind of endorsed or enabled and gone along with whatever the military establishment was alleged to be doing has brought Pakistan to the point where it is today. That's how I look at it. And now finally, if we have a Prime Minister who's saying that, who's saying things that, who's talking about the system to be what the system should have been all along, I think all of us should appreciate it. What the difference between what he's saying and what Mr. Nawaz Sharif has been saying in his speech are two completely different things. This is a person that Nawaz Sharif what Nawaz Sharif is saying is a reaction. Let's be honest. If for instance, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just trying to understand whatever has happened. If going by whatever's been reported in the media, if that deal had gone through, if hypothetically Maryam Nawaz had been allowed to leave Pakistan, if Shehbaz Sharif had not been arrested, if things had gone the way they wanted them to, I don't think they would have been saying all things. That's the whole thing. It's not that they have an issue with the establishment doing what they think, what they say the establishment has done for the last 40 years or 50 years, or I think it's been 50 years. Yes, the first martial law came, so it was 60 years, 1958. So the fact that these people have been there, these people have benefited from the system.
But Meher, you agree that there is that. You agree that there is that checkered history as far as the military is concerned. Whether their motives for bringing it forward at this time are, controversial or not is a different thing, right?
Yes.
Right, okay.
No, yes, look, as I said, Nawaz Sharif standing up against the military establishment, wonderful on its own. But let's not be naive. Let's not convolute the truth, convolute the reality. For whatever reason, their people have been meeting the military establishment. Nobody should be meeting the military establishment behind the scenes. That's how it should be. We are all of us, any sensible Pakistani, even people who are in the military right now, nobody supports the martial laws, nobody supports the military dictators, nobody supports what has happened to democratically elected governments all along. The problem is Nawaz Sharif and his party have been part of the problem. At least Benazir Bhutto's party, at least Pakistan People's Party, can step away from all this and say, okay, we've never really gone to them, we've never really asked them for a deal, we've never really done anything that goes against our.
But I think that in one of her speeches, Maryam Nawaz Sahib said that just because things we have done wrong in the past. I think she even said as much. If we have done wrong in the past does not mean that past should be repeated, or that we can now not look back and say that this is where we went wrong or anybody else went wrong. I will come back to you. I'm going to go to Safiullah Wari. Safiullah, what's your take on this? Again, the same question, that she did categorically say that, and I think most Pakistanis do agree that as far as the military is concerned, in the past, we do have a checkered past with the military. And the Prime Minister himself also mentioned that situations have been, he would have reacted differently, he said, but nevertheless, there have been...
Absolutely, Mahrukh, so this is exactly where the entire problem starts. So we have an interview of Imran Khan that has come about after a very long time, and that interview was barely an interview of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, but rather a targeting campaign against the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. That's really what went on for 1.5 hours throughout the interview. Now, Imran Khan blamed Nawaz Sharif for being an Indian agent and trying to destabilize the country by maligning the armed forces and by maligning the judiciary. I just want to bring back the perspective and try and see what he himself ended up doing. So he himself, Mahrukh, was he himself first blamed the Lahore High Court for letting Nawaz Sharif go, instead of accepting responsibility that it was his party, it was his people who went to the Lahore High Court and filed an application saying that we want Nawaz Sharif gone on humanitarian grounds.
Right.
He instead says that it was the High Court's fault that he went. So where he blames Nawaz Sharif for maligning the judiciary, he's done the exact same thing. And when it comes to the military, by saying that Nawaz Sharif is trying to malign the military, he has done the exact same thing by bringing in a long history of every time the military has been involved in rigging the elections in Pakistan, but just not this time because Imran Khan is there. So in a way, what he has done is he has lent a lot of credibility to Nawaz Sharif's point of view, who says that the judiciary or the military is biased. Because the Prime Minister comes on TV and says the same thing, that they have been biased, they're just not biased right now.
But Safiullah, as a lawyer, as a student of law, how do you look at the fact that certainly from a former Prime Minister, who has been the Prime Minister, or, 3 times,
Yeah.
to come out and say these things now. Certainly,
so
let's not, whether the agent part or not, but the question is, how does it look internationally?
I don't think that internationally it matters. But it's a very national matter. Now, Imran Khan wants to make this an international matter. He wants to make it all about India, about Afghanistan, about the US,
You don't think
foreign
Indian
powers.
channels? You don't think Indian channels are going to pick this out and
They
start
already
debating
do
it
that.
on-
They
on
already
their
do
prime
that.
talk
They have been doing that for a very long time. Indian channels have it out for us. They will take anything that we have, even if we have nothing, they'll create something and they will start attacking us. That is what they have been doing for a very long time. Our animosity with India, the way it stands, the way both nations have been attacking us, especially as you've seen with the UN General Assembly, there is no further room. The only thing that can happen is both nations can come together and talk now. They cannot blame each other any more than they already are blaming each other. But when it comes to the military's role, now what I am saying is that where Nawaz Sharif blames the military, Imran Khan has also gone ahead and blamed the military, but he is blaming a military of the past, Nawaz Sharif is blaming the military of the present. Now, whether the military should be blamed or not is a completely different thing, but I believe strongly that as a patriot, and I'm a lawyer, I have no qualms in admitting that the courts mess up every now and then. There is miscarriage of justice. There is miscarriage of justice that is caused by my community. That is miscarriage of justice that is caused by the honorable judges. That does not make me an Indian agent. That just makes me somebody interested in reform. So if we are for the first time talking about civil military reforms, if we are talking about setting standards as to where an institution should intervene and where an institution should not intervene, that should not be taken as an attempt to destabilize the country. That should be taken as an attempt to fix the country and hopefully move on. Because otherwise we could always change our constitution and give the military a role like they have in Turkey. They have constitutional roles, they sit in the government, they make decisions. So we already have, for instance, in this cabinet, about half of the positions being occupied by military or retired military officials. I feel that they do, in fact, they are instrumental in fulfilling an important purpose, which is making Pakistan.
Amir Sahab, I will come back to you just now. Don't you think that there is, and the same question to you, don't you think that there is, like Meher is saying, whether it's the PMLN or the PPP, because PTI, this is the first time that they're in power, we have to, give them that. It happens reversely, whether it's the PPP or the PMLN, the military is blamed periodically. And this is not, of course, in the fact that it's come out this vociferously, I guess, is the first time. But it nevertheless does happen in the past also. We've seen, Benazir Bhutto also talking against the military. Of course, she had that history with the Benazir Bhutto. There is that confrontation that happens from the other party, whoever's in the opposition, dragging the military.
Wouldn't we be happy then that a debate is now finally taking place on the forefront rather than hidden inside drawing rooms or
you don't think the motives are circumspect? As far as the motives are at least a little suspect. As far as the PML, and
I would understand why every single time there is. So let's make this clear. So the motives, of course, in this case would be that they are trying to get some sort of amnesty when it comes to their corruption cases. But that's always going to be there. There are always going to be corrupt people within Pakistan who are trying to escape accountability. That won't go away. And so Pakistan has a long checkered history of corruption as well. So does that mean that just because there are a few corrupt people undergoing some corruption cases, we stop talking about the military altogether, or about other institutions, about how the judiciary is behaving or how other institutions are behaving? The country has to move forward. It cannot be held back by some people just because they have other problems going on.
I will come back to you. Just one question from Meher. Meher, do you think that this is, in your opinion, do you think that this narrative would continue if tomorrow there are no cases against the PMLN leadership, for example?
Sorry, which narrative?
The same narrative, the narrative against the establishment, the narrative against the army, the narrative against the rigging in the elections, all of that which is being said at this time.
Mahrukh, as you just said, and the gentleman, I didn't get his name for what he was saying, but it's wonderful that that people have started to talk about it and it's come to the forefront, and that's the way it should be. We all agree on that. There is nothing wrong with that. Everybody has always been complaining about the army one way or the other. Imran Khan has been a very vociferous opponent of many things the army did or has done in the past. The point is just a few days ago, two meetings took place, two meetings of Mohammed Zubair took place. If those meetings had turned out to be the way the PMLN wanted them to, would we be seeing whatever's been happening?
Right,
in
exactly.
the last
I'm going to
few
see
days?
Rafiq Rajwana Saab. Do you think that, this question to you,
Yes.
if the meetings with Zubair Saab, if whatever, he of course doesn't admit to whatever, and the PMLN doesn't also, but if your meetings with the military, or with whoever you are saying is calling the cards, are fruitful, the point is, will this narrative then continue, or will it die a death? Because in the past we've also seen the PMLN come out and talk about things, and then it disappears.
Let's make out a clear-cut, rather let's differentiate and make out a case which is wrong and which is right. What does the Constitution say, and what is being practiced and had been practicing? The people have been practicing, the establishment has been practicing in past, and what the grievances which were being narrated by Mia Nawaz Sharif Saab yesterday in its speech in the Central Working Committee. I was also there. Then we have to take care of the situation instead of having head-on collision from other side also. I was just listening that what Imran Khan is saying and what he is doing. I will again reiterate at the cost of repetition that he should take care of the situation and should satisfy the people and should really admit what is wrong and what is right. In our country, we had been always going ahead without learning any lesson from the past. Can anybody deny that in the past, at what stage, at what time the establishment had been playing its role in forming the government, in dethroning the government, in removal of the prime minister? This is what the people are saying, what the people will say again if this thing continues. So
Right.
I would request
Right, fair enough.
that
Let me
all these
come back to you.
stakeholders, just listen.
Amir Saab,
All these
what's your take on this?
Well, I think there are two things that we have to differentiate. Historically, political parties in Pakistan have been trying to build vertical relationships, not horizontal. Democracy is all about creating horizontal relationship and alliances with the people. So the real strength of political parties must be in the constituency of people rather than looking upward. The problem with that, when we are in a position, we always talk about the state institutions, sometimes talk about military establishment. It's always, military establishment must not be in the politics, but this narrative should always be a consistent narrative coming along with the vertical relationship with the people and the institutions at the grassroots level.
But Amir Saab, if you tell people, like the PMLN is saying openly now, as far as the elections are, the last elections are concerned, they're openly saying, talking about how this government has been brought in. They're not actually, they're saying that we vote ko izzat do, and the fact that the vote was stolen, all of that, then, of course, they would want to build relationships with who they believe brings them in power if they believe people don't do that.
The problem is the institutional problem. You see, after 18th Amendment, we wanted to see that the power is devolved to the district and union council level, and then you have institutions at local level from where you can build a nursery of political leaders, right? So when politics come from the grassroots, then there is a tradition of movement that people understand and learn about politics through their own action with their political institutions. We don't have institutions. I mean, people, we have never seen the big parties going to the people for the institutional reform at the ground level, because if you do that, then your leadership has gone. Because the Pakistani culture, the political leadership is being captured by elite. So elite would never like the common people to come forward through the nurseries of the institutions on the ground level. So that is the problem, because when they go to deal, they want to do negotiate with the military establishment and others, but at the same time, when it comes to empowering people so that they will speak on behalf of political leaders, that is missing. So that is the problem. I think that the radical problem that has to be addressed right now is to strengthen the institutions, the democratic institutions at the grassroots level, so that there is a people's strength which will speak up. People will speak up. I mean, if Prime Minister is thrown out of Parliament, so people should come forward and react what we have seen in Turkey, right? So this comes from a strong political tradition, the institutions, the governance system at the grassroots level. So that is where we are lacking, and that is where all political parties are lacking. I think it's not. It wouldn't work if you continue confronting with the state institutions while you don't have power yourself. If you use the same power lever to become Prime Minister.
Do you think I will come back to you, G. Safullah, do you think that the PMLN is trying to garner that kind of support? Certainly they want to go to the people. They're talking about street agitation now. The Pakistan Democratic Movement, all of it, they are still at this time talking about it jointly. Of course, Maulana Sahab is also part of that, the PPP also. Do you think that they're trying to get that support? They're trying to mount the pressure at this time, as far as to the government is concerned, to the according to them, the powers that be.
Right. Yes, of course, Mahrukh. It's very obvious that movements like these, whenever they've taken place in the past, have always eventually ended up on the street. We have the example of PNA, which happened during the People's Party time. We've had more recent examples of where we had the Pakistan Democratic Alliance, the PDA. And so, of course, it's very obvious that eventually, if nothing works out, they will resort to street agitation. Keep in mind that winter is also coming. This is what you call standard dharna season, and this is where you are able to get people out rather than in the sweltering summers of Pakistan. So the timing also seems to be quite on spot. It does appear that there's something happening, and the fact that the next meeting is in Quetta, and traditionally a lot of movements start from Quetta, that's also very very symbolic of what could follow. I feel that, of course, there are problems. As much as PTI is consistently trying to turn this into the problem of them trying to get an NRO, it's not that anymore. I feel that now the genie is out of the bottle. For the longest time, people could not talk about what they had in their hearts. One of the things that we've all spoken about is the role of the military establishment. Now, the fact that we're discussing it here today on national television shows that this movement has accomplished something. The fact that the Prime Minister felt compelled to go on air and give an interview shows that this movement has accomplished something, because we now need to start dividing.
His motives are very clear. He said that the effect it's having internationally, the effect it's having as far across the border to a hostile neighbor, he needed to come out.
That's exactly what Nawaz Sharif said when they had the Panama Leaks case. He said the exact same thing, that the effects it will have is very bad. I am the Prime Minister of Pakistan. If you file a case against me for corruption, the effects it will have of Pakistan having a corrupt Prime Minister are going to be terrible. So anytime you try and fix yourself, anytime you try and point out a problem, there will be some criticism from international quarters. There will be some people who will look down upon you, but that does not mean that we should not fix ourselves and step forward and try and change things as they stand. So I will qualify everything that I've said here by stating that I do not believe that these are the right people who will come forward and fix things. But I think that if you were to take the matter on its own, as a standalone incident of them trying to confront the government by raising constitutional matters, by raising deep structural fractures that we have within our state, then yes, it is something that I feel is going to have a positive impact on Pakistan in the long run. Not, of course, right now.
Rafiq Saab, what do you think will happen ultimately with the narrative that you are now selling to the people, your agitation? What is the ultimate goal that the PMLN at this time is striving towards?
Actually, now the Pakistan Democratic Movement, all the political parties, major political parties have joined their hands together, and the first session or the first meeting is in Awami Jalsa is at Quetta. It's not the agitation. It's just representing the passions of the people, the feelings of the people. It's a duty of the opposition to watch it in everything being done by the government, by the Treasury benches. And this is the role of the opposition everywhere in the world. A little democracy which we have, unfortunately, it will not flourish because of so many obvious reasons. Everybody knows without emphasizing more on this, because we have discussed a lot on the role of the establishment. So now we have to go to the people and let the people decide.
Rafiq Saab, are you going to call, does the opposition intend to call, in your opinion, for early elections? Because you're saying that, this government at this time has not been brought, according to you, legitimately.
It is the decision of the Pakistan Democratic Movement leadership that what agenda they will put in the meeting, that whether they want the election. People want to get rid of this government. People are fed up from this government. It was good that this government should have completed its 5-year tenure. But if they complete the 5-year tenure, what will happen to the country?
But if people are so fed up with this government, then let them decide after the due course, and let them bring whoever they feel is more competent. If they want to bring PMLN, they will.
We have to go to the people. By holding the jalsas and everything, we are not turning the table. We are not upsetting the government. We are not removing the government.
Right, fair enough.
But we have put a strong
what do you think as far as the NRO is concerned? If that is no longer on the table, that is no longer an option, considering the fact that it is now quite open, it has been debated, it has been talked about, the Prime Minister has also said it countless times, the opposition has also, answered the PMLN particularly by saying that there is no question of them asking for an NRO, saying that, whether there is that authority or not, all of that has been debated back and forth for a long time. If that is no longer on the table, what do you think will they eventually achieve, or they hope to achieve by this democratic movement now?
Are you asking me?
Gigi, I'm asking you.
I'm sorry, most of the time I can't hear most of what is being said. It's a bad connection. It's just ironical that both the gentlemen are talking about PMLN doing the right thing and cheering for civilian supremacy and so on and so forth, and they are talking about doing not these gentlemen, but the PMLN and the other parties, their movement. They are trying to do what has happened to Pakistan in the last 30-40 years. Look at what Bhutto said about Ziaullah said about Bhutto, what Ghulam Ishaq Khan said about Farooq Lagari said about Benazir Bhutto's government, what Ghulam Ishaq Khan said about Nawaz Sharif's government, then their governments were dismissed twice, and then what Musharraf said about Nawaz Sharif, and then how Nawaz Sharif felt very happy when what was his name? Yusuf Raza Gilani's government was dismissed. It's just so strange that they are trying to do to Imran Khan's government what has happened to them, and what has become their biggest battle. It's so strange that they are saying the country
very
is
true.
doing.
What you are saying is very apt and very true. But you do agree that there is very much a third role there. If we look at the past, and if we look at what happened with the dismissal of successive governments, certainly there is a third player here. There is not just two democratic forces against each other, in those instances at least.
What did you say?
I'm saying that as far as the past is concerned, if we look at the successive dismissal of governments, the way you are saying, the instances that you are talking about in the past, there was certainly a role played by a third force. We can't discount that. Whether it was criticized or whether it was talked about later against whoever was benefiting at the time, the role itself was certainly there looking back.
Oh, absolutely. Military establishment has always been there, and then judges came in and presidents came in, and what I'm saying is, one or the other, the system has been convoluted. The system has been messed around with, and look at where Pakistan is today. I'm very happy that the last two governments have managed to complete their terms. I hope the next Prime Minister completes his full term.
Yes,
his full term. I hope that is the norm, because this is how normal civilized countries work. Not unhappy people are with Boris Johnson or people are with Donald Trump. They will wait for the election to see that person go. In the year of coronavirus, when the world has been turned upside down, when there are so many problems, there is nothing to do with the government inefficiency or bad governance, or bad policies, or bad implementation of policies. What has happened is that the whole world is being turned, the world is facing certain problems. Now, when people have so many issues, they do not have enough to eat, they do not have jobs, they do not have any kind of security. What these parties are going to say to them is, okay, let's get out of let's not force the government to work harder and do something for you, and and make your life easier. What we are going to ask you to do is come on the road, turn the country upside down, and force this government to do what this government is never going to do. No matter how many protests there are, no matter how many jalsas and rallies they will hold, Imran Khan is not going to resign. It's as simple as that. He said it categorically. Anyone who's watching Pakistan politics is aware of that, inside and outside Pakistan. So instead of helping people in the
right, Meher, I understand. I think that's a very relevant point. Safiola, I think Meher makes a very relevant point when she says that, whether this kind of criticism at this time, this kind of street agitation at this time, if the motive is not questionable, then wouldn't it serve the ends, if it serve the people of the country more, if this kind of criticism was more in Parliament, was more, garnered towards actual criticism of the institutions, not actual criticism, of the institutions, but the policies of the government, which would then, force them to work harder, as it were, to use her words, or actually
that's a historic debate, really, when it comes to any democratic country, Mahrukh. There has always been this question of whether the debates should stay in the parliament or whether that debate should come out on the streets, and both of them have their merits. You have the example of Europe, where people come out on the streets on the smallest things, and that's because you need to keep the pressure on any government to ensure that they keep on working by bringing the people out, by showing that you have the street power. This constant display of strength, even if it is for something as irrelevant as in this case it is the accountability process, it forces the government to perform better, because then they feel like they need to pull their socks up and they need to get to work and they need to please the people some other way. Otherwise the people will have yet another excuse, because it won't just be accountability then. By the time they come out on streets, it's going to be the price hike, it's going to be the stock exchange, it's going to be the way the trains and the waterways are being managed, and the way the rains are being addressed.
But at this time when the country is confronting, the world is actually dealing with a pandemic. Certainly we're not as affected as the rest of, unfortunately, fortunately, the rest of the world, but the question is, we are still in the middle of it, and we are dealing with the issues, the aftermath of it also. Amir Saab, do you think this is the right time, for whatever motives, to come out like this? Do you think that it will achieve anything positive as far as the people are concerned?
Well, I think when it comes to politics, as Safi was also saying, that political opposition is always there in every democratic society. And they will agitate, they will come out when they see that their agendas are not being met, that they are not being they are not convinced with what the government is doing. Problem is that when it happens, it is the responsibility of the government to understand and to come up to handle the situation. The bulk of responsibility rests with the government, and now we have seen that while the agitation is going on, and then people are coming out, and then the Prime Minister's statements are also coming with the same rigor, very reactionary and kind of confrontational mood and all that. So someone has to diffuse this. The diffusion takes place only through discussion. Do
you think it's possible now? Again, I want to go back and ask, do you think it's possible for there to be a kind of, if as the Prime Minister has said, as the government is saying, the motive is accountability, on which the Prime Minister refuses to compromise at all. There is no question of an NRO in whatever shape, form or not, whoever has the authority of giving it. Do you think there's that possibility of a reconciliation or a conciliatory style of politics?
The matter of accountability itself is a policy issue. We have seen in the past in Pakistan, National Accountability Bureau has been used politically, and it has a strong link with the power. So I think it is a contested debate whether it is accountability is is across the board, or is accountability is only for selected people? This is an important debate. The government must demonstrate through its action that it is not selected.
Across the board.
It is across the board.
Right.
And that is the where you have the trust deficit comes in. And that is the reason that there is a lot of reaction coming on. And when it happens, I think there is responsibility, bigger responsibility lies with the government to demonstrate that, well, what we are doing is fair across the board, and it gives a message to everyone that it is all about governance. It's all about dealing with corruption. But if you don't do that, if you don't demonstrate through action, or if you give political statement on television saying that the XYZ will be nabbed, XYZ will be arrested before time, it creates a lot of confusions. Then you can talk about accountability being across the board and it's transparent. So that's the problem. I think that has to deal with.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Mahrukh, because this is what the difference is between a democracy and a fascist dictatorship. Yeah. If you have the entire opposition locked up, and you are the only person standing there, and you think that everybody who ever speaks up against you is a foreign agent trying to destabilize the country, and you can take any action in case, by the way, it's the Pakistani law under Article 6 says that if a person is accused of treason, then the only penalty is death penalty. There is nothing short of death penalty for that person. So you start accusing everybody who stands against you of the most heinous crimes. You instruct PEMRA to ban their speeches. You place gag orders on newspapers, on all media forms. The only way democracies move forward is by ensuring that there is freedom of thought, freedom of discussion, no matter what the topic is. I'll absolutely agree that accountability too is a policy issue.
As far as that banning debate is concerned, certainly, there is no question about the fact that the former Prime Minister is a convict.
Yes.
And although not an absconder at this time, he has does he have the authority to address?
I think that's where you sort of misspelled. He's an absconder, not a convict.
No, I don't think he's been declared an absconder.
No, he's an absconder by the Islamabad High Court's order, but he's not a convict. He's not been convicted as yet. But the judgment that PEMRA has used is of anybody who's an absconder, anybody who runs away from the process of law not being allowed. But this is a judgment of 1990. It's a 30-year-old judgment. Since then, many other judgments have come forward which consistently emphasize the importance of the freedom of speech and the freedom of movement. And to add to that, we even have HRCP's statement today, which says that this is unconstitutional. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan has come forward today, stating in a very lengthy statement that what has happened is something that will eventually go to courts and will probably get overturned by the courts. So I feel that for a healthy democracy, you need debate, you need people to come out on the street.
But perhaps this is an issue that the Islamabad High Court or the courts need to rule on, as far as particularly in this case where the convict in question is a former Prime Minister. The rules are different, has gone on health issues.
Yes.
All of that, I think that's clarity that's needed on that issue.
This PEMRA notice is going to get challenged. That's what I just said. That it is a notice that is going to get challenged. But keep in mind, this is the first time PEMRA has done this. There are many other absconders who have not been served notices of this sort.
Maybe they're not making as many speeches.
Maybe they're not making as many
Thank you so
speeches.
much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Amir Hussain Saab, thank you for being with us. Safiullah Ghori, thank you for joining us. Meher Tarid, thank you for being with us. Rafiq Rajwana Saab, thank you for joining us today. As far as the issue of agitation is concerned, as far as the issue of criticizing the government is concerned, it really is something that should perhaps be done in the Parliament. One hopes that we can have that kind of democracy, functioning democracy, where the opposition criticizes the government on policies in the Parliament and therefore forces the government to work better, towards giving whatever they have promised to the people of this country, rather than the kind of street agitation that is now being questioned by the government and the motives of which are now being talked about. The NRO again is being debated. Certainly we've seen democracies like the US, we have a lot to learn from them, where there is a leadership at this time, like the president at this time is there's no question of removing the president, there's no question of criticizing, there is a question of criticizing the president, his policies, vociferously so, often, in a manner that perhaps, we haven't even done in our country here, but within the Parliament, democratically. Let's hope that we can actually get to that kind of politics, we can get to that kind of a democratic style, parliamentary style of governance that we must aspire to. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.
अक्टूबर का महीना हर साल आलमी सतह पर ब्रेस्ट कैंसर की आगाही के तौर पर मनाया जाता है। हर साल लाखों खवातीन इस मर्ज की आगाही न होने की वजह से मौत के मुंह में चली जाती है। ये मर्ज आमतौर पर खवातीन में पाया जाता है। बर वक्त तशखीस न होने की वजह से जानलेवा साबित हो सकता है। अगर आपको सीने या इसके एतराफ में कोई गिल्टी या कोई तब्दीली महसूस हो तो फौरन डॉक्टर से रुजू करिए।
The ancient city of Taxila is the heart of stonework in Pakistan. This art, which has been preserved and practiced for centuries, can be seen on many major landmarks of the country. Notably, the Pietra Dura work in the Lahore Fort's Sheesh Mahal. These stone products take days to complete and require immense precision and skill from the craftsmen. The final products are perfect for souvenirs, gifts and decoration pieces, each depicting the richness of Pakistani culture at its best. Camel skin and ivory craft are trademarks of Multan's handicraft repertoire. Camel skin is cleaned, dried and mounted onto molds which can be of any shape desired. Multicolored lacquer painting is then used to
Hello and welcome to PTV World News. With the latest news and updates, I'm Sana Makbool.
And I'm Shazad Qayyum. Let's look at the headlines first.